This is The Second Studio, hosted by the Architecture and Design Office fame. My name is David Lee, and with me is Marina Borderonay. The two of us are partners at the office and hosts of this show, of course, and our guest today is Georgina Wilson.
Georgina is an architect, and she's also the founder of Georgina Wilson Associate, an architecture office based in New South Wales in Australia. You can also find her on TikTok under Ask an Architect.
Yeah, and she has an Instagram as well, which has a bunch of followers. And with her, we talk about her life story, as we typically do, and also at the tail end, her venturing into social media with a TikTok, and per her story, one of her TikToks got like 3 million views overnight.
That's crazy.
And kind of launched this whole journey. And I think the most important part of the conversation was really her observations about architecture and how architects, and she in particular, is helping the masses, helping the people who maybe don't have millions of dollars to spend on a project or billions of dollars of wealth to do this and that. And I think it's a real issue that we as a profession face, and probably larger society faces, is this problem of architecture costing a lot, the high-end architecture we all want to be doing. But the reality is that there's a lot of people who need a good design, who maybe cannot afford full services or cannot afford, again, to spend the highest amount of money on all these nice materials. And she is solving that with her floor plan business, which you'll hear about in the podcast. Sponsors.
Would you like to get as-built faster? IPX has you covered. IPX lets you seamlessly transform laser scans into LOD 300 BIM and CAD files. Whether you've got your 3D scans already or need the full laser scanning service, IPX offers instant pricing and order tracking for scan to BIM services on any project, no matter the size or complexity. Plus, your BIM files can be seamlessly transferred to Autodesk Construction Cloud, allowing your construction team to start work right away. Start your next project on the 50-yard line with accurate data. Click the IPX link in our show notes to learn more.
Managing design projects and specifications can be a headache, but Programma makes it easy. Trusted by top firms in 75 countries, it's the world's most beautiful software for interior designers. Its suite of powerful tools offers simpler client interactions with less back and forth, saving you hours of manual work and making your job more enjoyable. Stop struggling and start thriving with the seriously powerful Programma. Click the link in our show notes and get 25% off an annual subscription with the code SecondStudio at checkout. Trust us, you'll wonder how you ever worked without it.
Available with Revit version 2023.1 onward, Autodesk Insight is a next-generation carbon analysis tool that can help you make the leap to low-carbon design. With only a few clicks, Insight lets you analyze, understand, and track the embodied and operational carbon impact of your design choices. You can then visualize opportunities for energy efficiency and carbon mitigation with its flexible dashboards, helping you make more sustainable and informed decisions. Check out the Insight link in our show notes to find out more.
This is The Second Studio with myself, Marina, and our guest, Georgina Wilson. Here we go.
I'm from Australia, so Sydney. I've spent most of my life living in Sydney. And I guess I never had any real notion of architecture as a kid or growing up. But I used to really enjoy drawing buildings for some reason, which is weird. It was kind of like playing in my mind. So I'd draw these homes or schools or hospitals and just imagine what it would be like to inhabit these buildings, which is weird. But yeah, I mean, growing up in Australia was really cool. A lot of outdoor kind of stuff. Sydney is quite an eclectic city, I guess. So there's a lot of different styles of architecture and landscape. I don't know.
We've not been to Sydney. Yeah, we haven't been to Sydney, but it's a city. I mean, there's lots of large.
Yeah, it's a big city, so there's lots of large buildings. I think there's 5 or 6 million people in Sydney, so it's a reasonably large city. But I guess the focus of our life, or at least for me, has often been outdoor activity. So, surfing, beach going, swimming, enjoying the harbour. Walking, that sort of thing. So I guess, I don't know. It's quite an outdoors city. Maybe it's a bit like LA. I don't
Is
know.
it on the warmer side of Australia? If there is a cold side, I don't even know.
No, it's not really like that. Australia's not so much like that. It's on the east coast. So it's fairly moderate, the temperatures. Like, you know, in the summer it gets very hot, up to 35, 40 degrees.
Oh, wow.
And in the winter it might be like 15 degrees Celsius in the day. So there's no snow or anything like that. It's a very hospitable climate. So
it is kind of like, some parts of California, it sounds like.
I think so. I think
so.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what someone had told us too. It's moderate. It's sort of like Los Angeles. It's an interesting thing. We've recently, the last like year and a half, met more and more Australians.
It's like we've discovered Australia
in the architecture scene.
Really?
Yeah, it's a funny thing. But so your fascination with drawing buildings, which is not the most common pastime for a kid, right? Were your parents architects or artists or engineers or something?
Not at all. No, they were doctors.
Oh, okay.
They were both doctors. So it was, I didn't know anything else but doctors, you know. There's a lot of doctors in my family. So, yeah, I didn't really know what to do with that. I guess I just grew up and I had this random mix of talents and interests. Like I loved maths and loved drawing, and I was also a flautist and a ballerina at different points.
What was the first what? A
flautist, like, a musician. So I played the flute.
Okay, gotcha.
So
you played the flute. That's awesome.
Yeah, so I took all these things quite seriously, to quite a, high level. But yeah, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I just had this random mix of interests that didn't seem to make much sense. And it wasn't until a friend of mine had a father who was an architect, and he was just like, you really should try architecture. And that was the first time I really thought about architecture as a career. So yeah, it was a bit random.
And obviously now you are an architect, but looking back, what was your childhood house like?
It was lovely, our childhood house. It was not large. Like when I think back, there's 5 of us in my family when I was young, and it had 1 bathroom for and I think we shared, like my brothers and I shared 2 bedrooms between us, and my parents had a bedroom. So it wasn't large, but it was a really lovely home. It was probably built in about the 50s or 60s.
Mm-hmm.
And it had beautiful light. And yeah, I just remember always loving it. We lived there for most of the life that I remember. Like before that, we lived other places, but I don't recall it so well. But yeah, it was a lovely home, like very well built, very solid, and not big, but worked really well, and just was always a lovely place to be. The lovely garden.
A lot of daylight and a nice garden.
Yeah, lovely. And also, we always would have visitors and guests and friends, so it was a very lively home. And yeah, everyone was just quite comfortable. It was a lovely place to live. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's the same in Australia, but in the United States, you do elementary school, junior high school, and then when you're about a sophomore or so in high school, you're meant to choose what college or university you're going to, and then choose the career for the rest of your life. I don't know if it's the same in Australia, but how did that transition?
Is
it similar?
Yeah, very similar. Yeah.
So is that when you had met your friend's, I think you said dad, who was an architect?
Yeah, it was around that. It was around the end of high school. So what you say, sophomore or your final year of schooling before you would go to college, like that sort of age. So around 16, 17. Mm-hmm. And I guess, I'd been taking the ballet and the music pretty seriously. Like, I'd gone on a scholarship to study in London with the Royal Ballet School. Like, so it was pretty serious. But I also knew, I don't know, I was just dealing with all of that but thinking I don't really think that's for me in a way. It's weird. And then I met the friend who had the architect father around that stage, around final year at school. And I just happened to put it down on my, the forms where you apply to the universities. And I thought, oh, well, like, may as well apply for that.
Yeah.
And I applied for Sydney University because it looked like the most fun. I mean, it's a great university as well, but it just looked like such a lovely building and nice place to be. So, and I got in, and I don't know. And yeah, it is kind of fateful, like you described. Like, you don't really know what you're doing, but you put this thing down. And yeah, I got in, and I don't know, from the moment I set foot in that architecture school, it was like just my crew, It was. I just feel very lucky to have stumbled across architecture as a career.
I'm very curious. It sounds like you were very serious about ballet and also playing the flute. Why didn't you decide to try and pursue either of those or both of those as, I guess, a career, let's call it?
Well, I did. I mean, to tell you the longer story, like, I did go to the Conservatorium of Music as well for a while, studied that. So I did sort of give it a go, and I gave ballet a go.
That's after high school, the conservatory?
Yeah. So I ended up deferring for 2 years, and I tried that. So it's just a long story, so I don't know if you want to get into it.
I'm kind of curious. So 2 years at the conservatory, classical music?
Yeah. Performance. So it was quite serious level. But at the end of the day, I just ended up thinking that with things like music and dance, particularly classical music and dance, you have to be like, you just can't help yourself. Like, you're so talented, you're so good, you're so absorbed by that art that you just can't possibly do anything else. And for me, I just still was I just had so much else I wanted to talk about and study and learn. I don't know, I was curious about other things. And I also just thought I wasn't going to be the best in the world at either of those things. I think, and for me, that was important. So I guess I was just honest with myself to say, well, I could be very good, but I'm not really going to be the best in the world at that, and you kind of have to be, I think, if you're going to pursue that as a career. So I didn't pursue it in the end.
It's really interesting. Listeners are probably sick of me saying this, but I find it. I also say everything's interesting, which is true. I think everything is interesting, but I was going to say that I sort of understand what you're talking about because I played the trumpet throughout high school, and in fact throughout college, and for a novice player, however you would describe, I would describe myself. I was pretty good, and that was my first very serious passion. But I don't think I ever thought that I was going to pursue it as a career. One, I knew I was not good enough, but two, I kind of agree with you that for musicians, I can't speak to ballet or dance so much, but for musicians, that you really have to be like all in, like that is your one, like that's it. And it makes what you said is so interesting because it makes me think that architecture is similar but also very different, because architecture allows you to be so diverse in the topics and the researches, and also focus at the same time.
It's not often that I speak to someone who can actually resonate with like what I've told you, like, because most people just can't understand what I'm talking about. but it's interesting to hear the way you sort of put it. It's so true. It's like when you go deeply into music, like at the highest levels, it's very very singular focus. It's and I guess for me, I kind of found it boring as well. You know, like
it's a lot of...
it was so disciplined and so focused, and perfection is all that matters. And for me, that wasn't ultimately that creative. And I guess, so there was something I loved about performing. So that was something, I don't know what that means, but really the music and the ballet, they're similar in that way. They're ultimately about perfection. And anyway, for me, I kind of found that didn't tap into the broader creativity that I want to sort of offer of myself. So yeah, when I found architecture, I love architecture because it's so broad. There's room for all types of architects. It's much more diverse. The people, you know, all sorts of people have architecture degrees and go and pursue all sorts of different directions. So I just find it so stimulating. It's like a playground for creativity, really. So yeah,
that's well said. I can see, you know, being a musician it can be quite lonely because you spend a lot of time just practicing in a room by yourself, woodshedding, like 6 hours a day, and you kind of have to.
It was literally like that, like 8 hours a day on my own in a cell, practicing, and I still wasn't perfect. But I think some people are immensely talented with music and things, so I think for them, like if you're the sort of person who just can't help but explore music in all different directions because you're that talented and that good, I mean, awesome. That must be really exciting if you're someone like that. But I wasn't quite that, you know, I wasn't that person.
So when you got to architecture school, one of my favorite questions is, what was it like when you first arrived? And you said you kind of fell in love with it. What were the things that made you fall in love with it? And was there anything that, you know, was more challenging than what you would expected?
Yeah, like actually, it was interesting. I think the first thing I fell in love with at architecture school was the people. I mean, don't get me wrong. My first year was more about the people, I think, than any kind of, I don't know, magnificent study experience. But I don't know, there was something about it, just the way they encouraged you to look at things and be observant and think about things. I just really found great. And so I started, I think I've heard people say this before, that, you know, architecture school teaches you how to see. And I do think it changes something about you, and you become, you know, observant in a strange way, which I guess once you're infected with it, you can't sort of unsee it. But so, yeah, I definitely struggled a bit with some things. Like there were quite a few people in my year who had sort of experience of architecture, like their parents were architects, or they grew up around architecture somehow, and they seemed to know a lot sooner than I did how to do certain things. Like I remember, you know, colouring my models in with green fluoro highlighter and, you know, just terrible things like that, which I was quickly told not to do. Don't ever do that again.
Well, to be fair, if no one tells you to start with, then how would you know?
Well, they didn't tell us not to, so
exactly.
I was trying to make a point. So a lot of people were more sophisticated, I guess, in some of these ways. They just knew what was done and what wasn't. But I think by about third year, I'd picked up most of those kind of things. That was when I started working as well. So yeah, I started that education of, you know, what you do and what you don't do, I suppose.
Did you find, I mean, I found in school that in the first few years, there is that gap between the students who come in and having knowledge of architecture, or some of them are just really, really, really good at drawing, which I wasn't, but it kind of rounds out by the time you get to third or fourth year. And to be honest, I've also found that stepping into school with that talent and skill and knowledge can be useful, but it doesn't really matter in the end.
But it's only useful if the teacher pushes you to go beyond that.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I feel like a lot of, the ones that were talented from the get-go, maybe if they were not getting challenged by the teachers, they were just kind of like just using
cruising.
The fact that they were already ahead and just cruising.
Yeah.
So
they might just rest on that and not really push beyond.
Yeah.
Yeah. And certainly, I guess, as you progress after architecture school and into your career, I don't think I've really seen that the ones that started out with that sort of architecture background or what have you have done better necessarily at all. I mean,
no,
I don't know what you think, but yeah.
No, it doesn't. And even like how you do in school and in the end over the course of 10, 15, whatever years, it
doesn't mean anything.
It doesn't mean anything. No, it really doesn't. Yeah. I agree with you. I don't think it really means anything. Yeah. It's sort of, it's so much about just the person, who the person is and, communication.
Yeah, especially if you have your own business, then it's a whole different ball game. When you went to school, to university, did you guys have studios? Because we were speaking with, who were we speaking with? Kevin Huey, I probably butchered the last name.
Yeah. He went to Sydney Uni as well. I think he was a few years older than me there. So I vaguely remember him being at uni. I've been in touch with him just here and there, just on social. But yeah, he was at uni, I think, just a bit above me when I was there. So yeah.
Yeah.
What was he saying? They didn't have studios, or
he was saying that they don't have studios anymore.
Well, he's a lot more familiar with it than me because I don't really deal with the universities anymore.
Yeah.
But actually, no. I mean, some of the people in my office still go to uni, and they talk about studios.
Interesting.
But he's based in Melbourne now, so I don't know. Maybe it's different at RMIT and Melbourne.
Could be.
But Sydney Uni does have studios at the moment.
Gotcha.
According to my colleagues.
That makes sense. I just can't imagine, going through architecture school without studio. No. That's like the one thing you think about when you think about architecture school.
Yeah. No, we have studios here. You have them in the States?
Yeah, we definitely do. The only distinction is sometimes the desks are cold desks versus hot desks. Cold desks meaning that's your desk for the entire quarter, semester, or year.
Yeah.
Versus hot when it's you come
can
in
move
just
around.
Exactly. But so you go to school and you fall in love with architecture. What happens right after finishing school?
Well, I'd started working. Like, I went and worked for Alex Arms, who, in my opinion, at that time at least, was the best designer of residential homes in Australia. In my opinion, this is not an official thing. It's just, I just felt I really loved his work and, loved it. So I made it my business to get a job there. So somehow I wheedled my way in and got a job as a student and then carried that through after I graduated as well. And so I had a great time there. I worked there for 10 years and got just, it was a great place to be. We got fantastic experience with the way buildings were actually made, like a lot of work on site. We worked with to create some of Australia's sort of most luxurious, beautiful homes. So therefore we got to work with a lot of craftspeople that were, incredible. And, we could do these things that, I couldn't normally conceive of, I guess, in a lot of people's homes. Also, Alec himself is just an excellent, and there was another guy there, Philip Rossington at the time, who was they're really, really good designers. So very sort of fastidious about the planning, and it has to be functional and it has to work and it has to be made well and high quality materials. And so it was just a really good place to have your early experience, I think. So I was very lucky in that regard. and, you know, met a lot of other excellent people. So that was the first 10 years of the career. Went by really fast.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I left there because I was having my first child. So that was some time ago. And it was the GFC. So my husband and I decided to move to France for a while because he wanted to do an MBA in France at INSEAD. So I kind of had a baby, went on maternity leave and had that in France. So we were there for the next year or two.
Wow.
So that was amazing. And then we came back to Australia, and that's when I started my own business at that time, because I was pregnant again. You know.
You timed it well.
So I was like, why not?
Why not start a business?
It was the GFC. It was like a terrible time for a lot of people. I was pregnant, had another child, whatever, on the way. And anyway, so I just started picking up some work, just some small things, and went from there. Yeah.
Your husband's not an architect, right? He's something.
Oh, God, no. You guys are you not married, are you? To architects?
We might be.
Are you married to each other?
We don't tell anyone whether or not we're married.
Yeah, we went the opposite route.
We're two architects. All eggs, one basket, one giant basket.
Podcast, office, everything. Yeah, everything in one pot.
Yep.
Well, I work with my brother, so siblings are okay.
Oh, no kidding.
But I've often thought, I don't know if I could marry another architect.
It's the opposite for me. I'm like, I don't think I could marry someone who doesn't understand architecture.
Yeah. I think it's I think it's either it works or it doesn't work, and it's very crystal clear one way or the other. You said you work with your brother?
Yeah, have done for many years. Yeah.
Wait, is he an architect or and some other? Oh, he is.
Yeah, so he's an architect. So I do totally love working with family, but.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So is he part? Is he part of your office, or are they separate practices?
Yeah. No, he's part of my office. Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So
we don't tell people that either. We just, I don't know. People find out in time, but that's right. Yeah.
That does happen to us sometimes, like months after, or even after a entire project's done. They're like, well, "So what's the deal exactly with the two of you?"
It's like, I know you feel like you've lied a bit, but you haven't really lied.
Well,
it's not really the point, is it? Like,
no, exactly. Yeah.
Never the point.
Is your brother older or younger?
He's younger than me. He's 6 years younger than me. So. It works.
Yeah.
Because I'm the boss.
You need clear hierarchy for sure.
Yeah.
Well, so you went through school and he understood, he saw what you did, and I'm guessing for him he kind of...
It's like, highlighters and model. That's
He's like, I could teach her how to do that better. Yeah. Oh, well, no, it's interesting because he's a very, we get along really well. We always have. But I feel like he's sort of a different architect to me. Like he's awesome with the technology and the modeling and the, all of that stuff. So we're very aligned, but he's got very different superpowers to me.
That's pretty cool.
That is amazing.
It's really good. Yeah.
So apart from being pregnant again, what led you to starting your own office?
I just always wanted to do it. And I guess, at the time it was quite hard to find other jobs, because I was also 5 months pregnant or something. I mean, people would just be like, no, so, which is understandable. And I guess it's just always what I had in the back of my mind, I guess, even though it wasn't formed particularly well. I just thought that's what I'm going to do. And, just do it then. It seemed just to naturally, organically happen,
So it's not like you had a plan. Okay, this is my business plan. That's step one. Step two, you just kind of went into it and figured it out.
I thought I'd just fill in the time, between when like I got back from France and maybe when the baby was born. And I don't know, like if it all didn't go very well, I'd just get another job after that. But it turned out it was quite a good time, because a lot of people, I guess, around the GFC time were probably looking for lower cost services. And because it was just me, I'm just starting out, I was able to sort of provide that, like at a fairly reasonable cost. But I was pretty experienced, so I was just lucky. Yeah, it was a good deal for them. Yeah. And then also the other good thing was that when I started to need staff, like I think around the time my child was born, I was able to second staff from my prior practice, like because everyone was getting rid of staff because of the GFC. So, you know, it worked for me because I could second staff in kind of a more flexible manner from my previous workplace. So it worked pretty well like that for a while.
So how did you manage starting your practice, working on projects while being like halfway through your pregnancy? I mean,
I mean, it was really lucky in a way, I think, that I started it then, because it was, you know, when you have young kids, life is very chaotic anyway. So I got a nanny somewhere along the line. I found a really lovely lady who still works with us, actually.
Cool.
And she and her daughter kind of took it in turns to help look after the kids. And anyway, so it just kind of, we all mucked in and it kind of worked. The work was a bit more, I guess, sporadic in a way. Like it wasn't as intense as it is later on, you know. So it was a bit more sporadic at that point, but you don't need that much work to keep one person busy. So you know, it's not that hard to get that much work. So yeah, it was good. And then I had another child as well. So, but by then I had all the structure kind of set up with some care and, like, you know, some people working in the business. So it just sort of evolved quite nicely, you know.
Wait, so in terms of dates, I'm trying to place the timeline of things. So when did you start your office, or how long ago was that?
That was 2010.
Okay, what year are we?
2024?
Yeah, is that right?
I know.
It's a
long time ago.
Yeah. 14 years. It's impressive. For the listeners, it's a Saturday morning for our guests, and it's a Friday
no excuses.
Early evening for us.
No excuses for me, because it's the middle of the day. It's like I should be alert.
No, you should be sleeping. No, not really. I think, what time is it? It's like 11 a.m. or something.
It's like 10:40.
Okay, well, that's a little bit late to be sleeping. So
yeah. No, I've already been to the gym. It's all good. I'm awake.
Okay, so 14 years.
Yeah, that was a long time ago, 14 years ago. Yeah.
So at what point did your office, and looking back, did it start to really gain traction where you felt like, okay, this is definitely going to work. I have people working with, I have employees now. I'm on my way, so to speak.
I guess, look, I felt like that pretty quickly, to be honest. But I mean, I never had a very big practice, so it's not like it's become immense or anything. It's just, I guess, fairly quickly I was building work and doing work, and I had a few staff because I kind of needed the staff because of my, you know, having babies and all that. So, and my brother joined the practice very early on too. So, you know, we had a small staff from very early on. And I just think we were quite lucky just to be building lots of stuff, like right from the start. Not necessarily like glamorous magazine-worthy stuff, but, you know, people's real homes. And I think, you know, we always just focused on giving them a really good home that would provide a good life, you know, like support their life really well, and do that in a sort of pragmatic way, I suppose. So yeah, I guess the years have gone by pretty fast, just doing all these different projects.
So how large is your office now? Like, how many people do you have?
Oh, it's still small. We've got 5, 6 at the moment.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, so small. Like, I never really, but I guess these days it's quite a different thing because, yeah, that's a whole other story, I guess. The whole social media, online space has changed things a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, it's and I want to talk about that for sure. But I was wondering, did you or do you have any plans or desire to get beyond that number?
Not really. I mean, I can imagine being at about maybe 10 staff or something like that sort of size. But beyond that, probably not. I think I would prefer to collaborate with other people, like other disciplines or other ways, than to have a really, really big office of architects. I mean, it's a different story, but I've always intended to keep it quite small, actually, and efficient.
Yeah.
Efficiency is very important to me.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, I think it does become obviously more, there's a different set of challenges once you grow, and then it becomes more of a business management, personnel management task, and all these
it's a machine you have to feed constantly.
That's what I think. I've seen it in the places that I've worked, where the offices have grown from, say, 20 people to 70 people, and it's like the wheels just start to fall off. Honestly, it's not the same thing at all. And I've got other friends that run very big practices, and they just seem so stressed, not necessarily better off, and they just exactly like you just said. It's just lots more mouths to feed, constantly trying to feed that machine. I'd rather have a more diverse practice of different, like, people with sort of different superpowers, different contributions. Anyway, I've got a lot of other thoughts about that, but that's a different story. Yeah.
Well, I mean, so different different superpowers, meaning different professions altogether, or architects that have different qualities?
Well, both. And these, look, I guess whilst we were doing very much the standard architecture, interior design practice, I would say up until about 2 years ago, or a year ago even, I think, we focused on having architects and interior designers in the practice. So still we focused on having people with different qualities, and we call it superpowers in our office because, everyone's got something unique to give, and it's really interesting to find what that is for the different colleagues that come into the practice. We always had that focus on, I guess, diversity of abilities, even if they were architects or interior designers. But these days, I guess, with the online stuff, where all that's going, I mean, I can imagine employing people with different potentially of different professions or backgrounds.
More on the social media side of things, or are you thinking like contractors?
No, not contract. No, probably more on the social media production side of things. Because it's quite interesting. Like, nowadays, we work with an agency very closely who is about the same size as us. Like, they've probably got about 6 people in their team, and the 6 of us work with the 6 of them very closely.
Wow.
It's just, so it expands your capacity a lot, but you don't necessarily employ them, under that sort of agreement. Yeah.
And now let's give a shout out to our sponsors who support our show.
In our office, we do a lot of remodel projects, and getting accurate as-builts of homes was always a challenge. As you can imagine, manually surveying a home is tedious and time-consuming. Fortunately, we discovered Canvas, an app that allows us to use our iPad or iPhone to scan entire homes quickly using LiDAR technology. Canvas processes the scan and produces 2D drawings or 3D computer models of the home. The file format are SketchUp, ArchiCAD, Vectorworks, Revit, and others. So click the link in our show notes or visit canvas.io/SSP to get your first as-built free. We are supported by Enscape, which is a fast and easy to use real-time visualization and VR tool for the AEC industry. Enscape is not a standalone application. Instead, it's a plugin which makes things much easier. It plugs into Revit, SketchUp, Rhino, ArchiCAD, and Vectorworks. And with Enscape, you can create realistic renderings, 360-degree panoramas, and videos. You can also immerse clients into VR to give them a deeper understanding of their building. Enscape is used by more than 500,000 monthly users worldwide from over 150 countries. So if you want a fast and user-friendly real-time visualization experience, click on the Enscape 3D link in our show notes.
So talking about that whole part of the story, which we haven't yet. So when did you start the whole social media ask the architect, ask an architect,
ask an architect?
Thing? Yeah, the architect. Yeah.
Ask the. I like that. But
yeah.
Ask the architect.
The architect.
Which one?
Yeah, there's only one.
Oh,
the
okay.
architect. Yeah, I like that very much. No, well, that sort of story, I guess, started about 2 years ago, I think, and I'd never really had any experience with social media or anything like that. But yeah, about 2 years ago, I guess post-COVID, I just had so many conversations with people, coming to see me and asking for help with their projects. Like, I'm renovating my house or I need to blah, blah, blah. And so many of them, I kind of wasn't able to help because the traditional service model of, architecture kind of makes it's very costly, it's very time consuming, it's, to service these people. And I don't know, particularly through COVID, the number of conversations that we had with people, wanting to renovate their homes or improve or optimize their environments was just extraordinary. But, I just couldn't service them using our traditional model. So something about that sort of irritated me. Like, I couldn't kind of figure it out. And I also noticed that a lot of people felt very empowered to sort of undertake the design and renovation of their homes themselves. And I saw all this sort of playing out, I don't know, through shows on TV and on the sort of Instagram space where you'd see all these sort of luxy pictures and but you kind of know as an architect, you kind of know that you're like, but that would be a really poor experience to live in, just as an experience, because I believe good design is about the experience of a place or how you live or whatever. So I was just kind of getting a bit annoyed, and I was wondering, I just thought, look, I wonder if the general population would be interested in having a more informed conversation about the importance of good design. And so I don't know, I'm the worst at public speaking and terrible. I'd be the last person you'd expect to ever talk on social media. But I just started one day talking to my phone and I don't know what it was about. It was about something on some aspect of design. And we put it up on TikTok because no one I know is on TikTok. And it just it just lit a fire. So before I knew it, it was just, I had this one video one night that got I think it was 3 million views in overnight.
Jesus.
And I was just like, I'd never even used TikTok before. So yeah, it was kind of like, it just lit a match. I don't know. People obviously were interested in having that conversation, which was really made me really happy, because I thought, well, that's fantastic. We can engage with people about design, and good design, and inform, properly. Because I just didn't know if I call them normies, like non-architects, they would even care,
Right.
Because we're architects, we talk about architecture, and probably we talk about architecture in a way that normal people don't care about. So yeah, and it's just been so interesting ever since. Yeah. So that was the beginning.
I think the closing that gap between the conversations architects would have and also the value architects bring to the world, and on the other side, the normies who might appreciate it but don't have any way to access that knowledge. It's closing that gap is a very, very important thing.
It's a shame, isn't it, that so many, I would also notice so many houses being built without the benefit of really good design advice. And I'm like, I mean, I don't know, I feel like what a waste of money, of resources, everything. And, so I guess that's where it started. And I also witnessed all my architecture colleagues kind of scrambling to service the top, 0.1% of the population. We're all about I'm working on a $30 million build, and that's sort of regarded as successful,
Right.
And so I see the whole architecture industry is scrambling to service that 1% or whatever. And what I am interested in is servicing the rest. The people, there are a lot of people building that they're not going to architects, or I don't know. So that was sort of part of my driving thoughts behind it. But I mean, ironically, I've definitely been one of those. I've only been servicing that top 1% in my own practice, and certainly when I worked with Alexander's. But I feel like maybe we could have more impact if we look more to the masses and, try to educate and just have that conversation.
I think we're in complete agreement.
And I think also maybe it's because of the media and TV and reality TV, good design is often associated with expensive things and a lot of things where you're right, even the most affordable home in a neighborhood could be designed on just basic principle of what makes good design, and the most expensive one, 30 million budget, could be designed, spend a ton of money, and it's bad.
So many bad houses that are expensive.
And so you wouldn't believe also, with the $30 million house, you actually have a lot more leeway to make poor design decisions, because you've got the space to fluff around. But I find when you're dealing with the small, you don't have any space to muck around. It's almost mathematical. There's a best answer. I believe there's a best response, and you need to find it and build that. Otherwise, you won't have that generosity of space that you could achieve. And we've seen, in my work over the past year, I think I've been reviewing up to 50 plans a month from around the world. And
oh wow,
I had no idea what to expect, but it's quite confronting, the sort of the things that we see, it's not good design at all. And these plans are coming from all different sources as well. So some people are trying to do it themselves, which is understandable. Other people have worked with some sort of designer or project, or maybe a home builder, or all different places.
Kitchen designer who's doing the whole house.
Who's doing the whole house, or like a builder that's designing the whole house, or goodness knows what. But it's absolutely fascinating.
So how does that work? Like, let's say I am one of, the people who, unfortunately I can't hire an architect on their typical service that they provide, but I'm sending you one of the plans of my potential house that I'm trying to do. Like, what's the process like? How do people reach out? How do you reply to them? Like, what's the workflow?
It's pretty simple. It's like people just reach out, and we offer this service on a square meter basis. So, there's I forget the exact rates, but it's like if you have a 100 square meter area of assessment, we call it, like if you want to do half your house, or I don't know, if your full house is say 200 meters squared, then we have a price for that. So people just submit their plans and their brief, and what they're trying to achieve. We try and go into quite a bit of detail on the brief just to make sure we really understand each other. And then within 2 weeks, we provide a revised plan, or a couple of options usually. So it's me or another colleague in my practice. We do the plan cracking, we call it, which is a horrible looking drawing, but it's basically a diagram where you solve the plan, and then my team draws it up on CAD so that it's very clear and easy to understand. And we annotate everything to show the design rationale. And then, within 2 weeks, the client receives some options on the plan. So 2 plan options, say, in most cases. Sometimes it's just one. And then they give their feedback. So they annotate the drawings. They might pick their option that they really like and say, put a bit of the other option in there, or change this or change that, or can you fit something else? So we go to and fro like that, basically until the person's just really happy.
That's super interesting.
Do you accept every plan that gets submitted, or do you select them? Like, I don't know, let's say I do have $30 million to spend, but I don't want to, pay an architect.
No, we've definitely done some jobs that have been like a $30 million, particularly in the States. Like, there's some really big jobs that get submitted. But we kind of think of it as we're probably a really good place to start. Like, say if you have a property and you really want to optimize it for functionality, like whether it's a new house or a whatever, like it kind of doesn't matter. We are just experts in that, the floor planning particularly. So I think, more and more as this goes on, I mean, we've only been offering this service for a year. So as time goes on, I'm hopeful that more people will come to us at the start rather than coming to us further along and needing us to fix it.
When they're in construction.
Well, like there's been a lot of that. It's like, we've got the diggers on site. Did you have a look at this? So, but a lot of people say to me also, like, I wish I'd met you. Like, I wish I'd known about you earlier.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, we didn't really exist much earlier anyway, but
you weren't one of the 3 million people that saw my TikTok. What are you doing?
Have any of these floor plan rescue turned into like an actual like full-blown project?
Yeah, actually some of them. So like it depends on the location. So, but yeah, actually we've got one that just is finishing now that started out as a floor plan like service, but it was a local person, so I am able to offer the full service architecture to them. Obviously, when we're dealing with people overseas, we couldn't do that. But this one was local, so we were able to pursue it further. So it's being built now.
Cool.
So that's interesting. I mean, we can do interior design services and exterior design services really for anyone, but you know, it's not like an architect, like you would offer a proper full architecture service to your clients, you know, in LA.
Sure.
It's more a design advisory, I think, for those sort of people. And actually we've had some architects reach out as well.
Really?
Yes, to have us review their plans to give to their clients. Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, you might need to give a master class to architects on how to do that.
I mean, a lot of them have done my kitchen master class, but, you know, I'd love to do a master class about plans and layouts, and you'd love to do that. I just haven't had the time.
The time. Well, it is true. I mean, you know, going back to what we're talking about with architecture being so diverse, which is a great thing, but it also means that there are, and I've seen it firsthand, plenty of architects who don't know how to do a floor plan for a house. 100%, like, you might be a tremendous architect in many other ways or other building types or whatever else.
Exactly. Yeah.
But when it comes to, I mean, so your story or your observations align with us. I mean, I've seen it. I can't tell you how many times we've seen floor plans that don't make any fucking sense. And I'm like, and sometimes they're drawn by an architect. I'm like, but you can't open the door. It hits the sofa.
I am absolutely shocked, absolutely shocked. I didn't expect to see that.
Yeah.
But what I see is that there are a lot of architects out there that have no idea how to design a functional plan. Like, terrible. And I also didn't realize that, like we said before, so many different types of architects. I didn't realize that I was that kind of, like, I didn't realize that I was so much that kind of architect. Like, I just thought everyone was. So it's been quite eye-opening. So, yeah, unbelievable. Every day I see something, I say at my desk, I'm like, this is the worst plan I've ever seen in my life. Every day.
You have to be careful. After this episode comes out, you're gonna get some really funky ones.
Well, they're not all from architects, I must say.
Sure,
I can't blame architects for everything. It's not. That would be mean.
I'll submit my own plan under a pseudonym, and we'll see what happens. I'm going to submit the craziest thing you've ever seen.
I have not once met a plan through this exercise that cannot use like massive Like, really? I've never seen a good one. Well, I guess that's why they're coming to me.
Well, yeah.
I don't know. Never seen a good one.
Is there something that you've seen that, I don't know, something that really stood out from any of those many plans that you've seen? Or maybe a trend, like something that just keeps showing up in those plans?
Yeah. There's there's a few things. There's one where it's like this configuration, and you guys in the States do this like all the time. It's a configuration of an ensuite and a walk-in wardrobe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it's like, but neither of the spaces actually work as they're meant to. Like, the bathroom is too small to be functional. The walk-in wardrobe gives you less storage than a cupboard.
Oh,
and,
dude, this is...
And the extra bedroom is compromised as a result. So it's yet someone is walking around like stamping these plans with this same pattern, and it's like, just... No, and then the bedroom has 3 doors.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like, And they're saying it's a walk-in wardrobe. Like, this is meant to be some sort of demonstration of luxury. So I'm like, I don't understand that. And the other thing I see sometimes, which just absolutely floors me, is having, like, I saw one plan the other week that had 3 separate staircases. Like, between the levels, there were 3 levels, I think, and there were 3 different staircase points.
Wow.
And a lift. So I'm like, well, in my mind, you consolidate the vertical circulation.
Right.
Like, obviously.
It was the architect's attempt to get people to exercise by going all around the house.
I don't know. Like, I don't know.
Well, they really love designing and detailing stairs, because we all know how fun that is.
All different ones, all different stairs.
Yeah.
And so that sort of thing is just like, whoa. Or the double corridor. where you see a corridor and then the real circulation just goes through all the rooms along the side, like the double corridor, or just massive amounts of circulation.
Yep.
It's a bit we actually did an episode about pet peeve, and I think that was one of them.
What's your pet peeve?
Oh yeah, that deadly. I call it the corridor, the hallway of death.
Oh, absolutely.
It's like this narrow little path that's dark, and there is
just goes on forever.
Empty wall. Yeah, and there's nothing at the end to look for.
Yeah, just a dead wall.
And then it curves and goes around. Like, no light.
No light.
That and garage doors are probably the biggest pet peeve of mine, especially in the States. I grew up in France, and garages are there, but they're kind of like secondary.
Yes,
but here it's the main facade of a house, and it just makes me sad.
Actually, that's so true. In the United States, the examples I've seen, they've got massive garage doors that take up the whole frontage of the house.
Yeah, and people don't even keep cars in there.
It's just junk.
It's just Christmas decoration, random stuff. It's ridiculous.
What's fascinating is seeing all these different housing arrangements from all around the world. Mm-hmm. I just love it. It's amazing to see the different parts of the United States or like the UK. I've had a few from France, just a couple. But just seeing all these different ones, it's amazing.
Do you ever get some from Japan?
I've had one. No, I haven't had any from Japan, I don't think. I've had a few from like Hong Kong.
Oh, yeah. It's tight there.
It's very tight.
Yeah.
And then seeing all the cultural things too, like, the maids' quarters and, or in the UAE. The different the different arrangements for help and different placement of kitchens and things. So it's it's fascinating.
It's really cool. So I'm curious about like I guess it's just the workload, sort of like the main projects where you're offering your full services versus these plan corrections. Is it 50-50? Is the plan work like 20%, 10%? Like at some point, is it going to be, it's going to ramp up for sure, I think, right? So
it is ramping up. So it's very interesting because it's, we've sort of, I guess, moved into a space that's like, it's an online business.
Yeah.
Part of the business is an online business. So we're learning a lot about how to communicate about what we do and how people buy that sort of thing. It's just a whole different ball game. But at the moment, I would probably say it's 50-50 at the moment.
Wow.
But it's every month it's kind of growing, the online stuff. And I feel like I'd like to do more education, really, like probably, so like your point about do masterclasses for designers or maybe normies too, about how to actually design properly from a functional plan perspective. I'd like to do that because education seems to be quite a good way to reach the size of audience that we're developing. I can't possibly fix everybody's plan in the world, but maybe I can help to sort of educate people and point them in the right direction. I don't know quite where it's leading, but we learn something new every day.
It's really cool to be able to see so many different plans and, early motive.
I love it.
Yeah, for sure. The early motivations you had or observations about the high tier, the 0.1% as you put it, versus everyone else is there's so many things you said that I completely agree with. The traditional full service architecture and design package is really tough for projects that don't have a certain budget. It's just a lot of hours.
It is. It's just, and it's not like it's architect's fault. It's like, it's a lot of hours, so much work. But I do think the model is kind of flawed. I don't know, in so many ways. We could go on about that forever, but yeah, and it only works if you're dealing with a certain budget of project, I think, as you say. So I guess I've just been really trying to think of other ways that I can package offerings to help that part of the population to hopefully achieve better design outcomes. I mean, that's the end of the day. That's what it's about, I suppose.
Yeah, I think it's really smart because when you have, and we've experienced this as well, when you have projects that are good people and they have like a decent budget, it's not like they're just peanuts, but it's not enough for us to work with. And I don't mean in terms of construction costs, I mean design fee or architecture fee.
Yeah.
And then when you have an architect like us or someone else who attempts to do that, it often really frustrates the architect because they're like, this is not, I'm not getting paid enough or whatever. And it's just a really, really tough
Understandably,
fit.
Yeah. Because it's so lean, you know, those margins for the architect can be so lean because there's so much work to get done. So I guess we've tried in our practice to also strip out some parts of the service that really don't need to be done by us. So, you know, if there's, you know, how the architect kind of gets lumped with a lot of things, like, you know, when you're employed or you're engaged by a client under full service type agreements, everything becomes your responsibility and your fault and your thing to deal with. So I guess within our practice, we do try to be pretty like clean and defined about which parts of the job we are doing and which parts of the job can perhaps be done by a planner or another consultant, or I don't know, even by the client themselves if they want to do that, just to try to limit the exposure to, I don't know, all the things, you know.
Yeah, we definitely draw the line very clearly for when we do projects, but in terms of traditionally what an architect or interior designer would do, we have just a really tough time doing anything that's less than full scope for the reasons that we've kind of been talking about. And actually, I'm just thinking about it now. I realize like probably 5 years ago, we were, and I think a lot of architects experienced this at some point. We were getting a lot of calls for small projects and we just couldn't do them. And I felt so bad. And
that's
we had
what
done,
I was experiencing too. Around that time.
And these people needed help, and I knew if these people go to the contractor or whoever, they're going to end up with something that's going to be bad. And so we did a few just like planned studies, and I remember now. I don't remember Rita. I remember thinking like maybe we could just do this as a side, not a side hustle, but just do that to help out these people. We didn't do it, of course. But so I think what you're doing makes a lot of sense. I mean, I don't know how else you solve the problem. I think it's I
have a feeling, look, I have a feeling this is not sort of the last word on it, but it's, for us at the moment, it's a very interesting pathway, really engaging with a lot of people, seeing a lot of plans, helping people solve a lot of plans, like going through this process, I think will help us come up with better ways to help people more at scale. But I'm still not 100% sure what that will be. But I mean, we're building up also a massive database of resolved designs. So, you know, I think that's interesting with the way AI is developing and things like, you know, just because we're seeing such vast quantities of these things and developing rules that apply to these conditions, you know, to these type of situations. So, yeah, I'm interested in where that goes, but I don't exactly know yet.
I mean, one could imagine that you would take your database, you'd upload it to this AI machine, it would spit out something that's pretty close to being, let's say like
adapted.
Exactly. Then you'd have a real person.
There might be a few glitches though, like a door that happens to nothing.
Yeah, sure. Well, you'd have a human
to put that in the rules.
Be checked for quality insurance.
Rule number one: walk-in closets have to be a minimum dimension before they make any sense.
Or else they're not a walk-in closet.
I know.
It's not a walk-in closet, right?
That point makes us laugh because we see that all the time, and even it's embedded in clients' mindsets that walk-in closets are the thing, and we have to explain to them
of luxury, and then
but exactly.
But if they're too small, then they just do not make sense.
It's a broom cupboard, right?
Yeah.
Most of it's a broom cupboard.
But that goes back. That goes back, I think, also to again, what is being told to people as being good design, and it's TV, it's real estate, it's the checklist of what makes your house valuable and what you must have in a home, and you must have a room where you can enter as a whole person and stare at your clothes.
I know, have your thousands of clothes.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess this is another reason why I think it's important, for people like yourselves and me as well. It's like, we really need to be part of the conversations. Like, we can't just sit back and be like, well, everyone else is telling people what to think and we're not around to participate. So just a different perspective, I guess.
What about... And I'm sure this must have crossed your mind. Oh, one comment real quick. You had mentioned when you were talking about you're playing the flute and ballet and that why that would matter. I suspect that you wouldn't be doing what you're doing now if you didn't have that background in performance.
Yeah, it's really bizarre, isn't it, how things work out? Because, sometimes I think that you're probably right. Like, I've had so many years of performance experience, and never used it. But now every day I have a camera in my face.
Well, but also I think, like you talked about music being kind of like this, infinite quest to finding perfection. And in some ways, like solving those plans and just kind of like trying to keep bettering them is maybe, kind of in parallel to that, right?
Maybe. It's also it makes me feel like it's like maths, solving a maths problem. It feels like that. So maybe there's some similarities there, but it's actually really nice for me because, having given up all that performing a long time ago, to sort of now be part of different types of productions that I never would have anticipated. Like making videos. We just started a YouTube account.
Cool.
So that gives you quite a lot more scope to create pieces of content that are interesting. And working with other people that are experts in that field, it's lots of fun.
What about a TV show?
What about a TV show?
Why? I mean, I'm saying this as if it's easy, just make it happen, but it must have crossed your mind. I mean, instead of having, what are those ridiculous shows on Netflix that about the, I don't know, whatever, Sunset Wife, I don't know, whatever things.
I don't know.
Why not have a Netflix?
I don't even know. I mean, they're awful. All of those shows, I can't. I don't really watch them, but anytime I've turned on the TV and there's been any kind of like, they have The Block in Australia. Do they have that in America?
The Block? Is that the name of the show?
It's like horrible. People competing to like renovate houses, and they're not architects or professionals in any way, and like everyone gets really into it. So definitely not. but I guess I don't know. What did you mean? Like TV show, like?
Well, you could have your own TV show and you're the antithesis of The Block.
Yeah. I mean, well, that would be amazing. Yeah. That would be cool.
If anybody is listening,
It'd have to be a certain way, though.
Yeah.
I mean, the one that I do like, I only really like the British version, but the, Grand Designs is has been pretty cool for a long time, but the British version. I don't like the Australian version or any other version.
I remember when I was in architecture school, there was a short, very short TV, well, I guess it was called a TV show or like a docuseries or whatever, that would play, I think, on like Saturday or Sunday afternoon for like half an hour. And it was this guy who would go around in France and visit people's homes, and they had a problem. You know, they had a room that wasn't working well, so they would bring in the architect.
That sounds cool.
And the architect would like actually sketch, you know, do like a perspective sketch and explain like, okay, well, we could do this solution and kind of like explain the process.
Yeah, that's cool.
Interesting.
And I was
that's
like, this
cool.
is so cool, because then you understand like how does the solution gets put together, what thinking goes into the final result. And it was oftentimes very simple solutions, but super powerful. Like it was
really
solving the problem.
Actually. I like that because it's solving a problem and illustrating why that would make sense.
And they would show the before and after.
Yeah, like there's one other British show I think that did that, Kirsty and Phil or something. It was also a British thing, a small show that I thought was quite interesting. And I guess we do look at some of these shows and we try to, I guess, do some of the things that they do, or we're thinking of doing that in our YouTube channel. So, but we've literally only just started. So it's interesting to see, like, YouTube's a completely different place to Instagram and TikTok, and like they're all really different. But yeah, I'm looking forward to doing more YouTube, and I guess we'll see what happens.
You're going to have to somehow duplicate yourself a couple times, I think. Find more hours in the day.
No. I've got a lot of people that work with me that are, you know, just so much better than me at other things. So it's really good because I get the freedom to do the things that I do because of them. So.
So on that, the company, I guess it's a marketing company. I'm not quite sure how you're describing it, but the 6 people and then you're 6 people.
Yeah, I guess it's a marketing agency. Yeah. Yeah.
And so I assume you're working with them to brainstorm and to figure out how these different ideas are, if they're worthwhile and how they get executed and all this type of stuff.
Yeah. That's right. And we had an interesting experience in April. We went to the Milan Design Fair and we met up with a videographer who was from Milan. Well, he was British, but he was from Milan, and we shot videos all week with him. So, I mean, that was a really interesting thing. It did feel a bit like a TV show. Like we had our own little documentary crew. So we're just always trying to think up new things we'd like to do. Like we're going to go to Adelaide soon and see one of the people that did our masterclass has finished her renovation and she wants to show us. So we're going to go and have a chat with her. So stuff like that we'll probably start to do. Yeah,
that's lovely. I like it. I mean, I don't know. Because of the podcast, we're more connected with folks like yourself and folks who are interested in these conversations. But so I'm maybe a bit biased with my community, but I am hopeful and optimistic that not only will more of these types of conversations and content be released, but that we will actually make a dent and make an impact in helping people understand what is good design versus bad, and actually helping more good design take place.
Yes.
It seems to be that there's more and more of that in the mindsets of architects. Even ones who don't have a podcast or a TikTok or whatever, there's this, and it probably ties to the fact that all of us are very aware of the growing disparity between the once existing middle class and the 0.1%. And we just collectively have to solve the 99.9% somehow across the board, but especially with, in our case, architecture.
Well, I do see, I mean, I kind of almost feel like maybe other types of designers or other types of people in our community have maybe done a better job than architects of bridging that gap. up till now.
Like interior designers?
Maybe, yeah, like interior designers have been a little more savvy, I guess, in just at least being part of the consciousness of the broader population. Whereas I think, and your perspective is probably a lot more on point than mine, because you have really talked to a lot of these people in a much more depth than I have. But I guess on a more superficial level, I just don't see as many architects actually talking to the normies, as I call it. They're more likely to talk to
other architects.
Other architects. Yeah, like everything they communicate through social media or their media is more. It just confuses me a bit. I kind of feel like they're talking to other architects.
Yeah.
Rather than to normal people. So that just is something that perplexes me a bit. I never really understood that. But I guess, lots of different types of architects. I mean,
there are plenty of architects who are just shy people as well, but I agree with your...
that's part of it, I think. I do think that's part of it.
And weird.
And weird.
Oh, yeah. And weird and awkward. I mean, there is a lot of very awkward architects.
The awkward architects.
You meet some and they have,
Definitely. And they're shy, they're awkward, they don't communicate very well.
Yeah.
I mean, on my social media the other week, I've put up a question, which got an incredibly lively response. And it was something about, because I'd noticed there seems to be quite a lot of negativity towards architects sort of generally around my account. And I was just asking people why is that? And so it was really interesting to get literally thousands of responses saying why. And I think your point about architects being awkward and not, then maybe it's because they're shy people a bit more, that way. But there were a lot of comments about architects don't communicate well.
Really?
And so many, there was definitely a theme of architects not communicating well. And I know it's a very challenging thing to be able to communicate effectively in that architect-client relationship. Very challenging, even for people who love to talk. But yeah, that was definitely just a massive theme that came through from the normies. Architects don't communicate well, and I kind of have to agree.
Yeah.
And I'm not surprised. I mean, I feel like a lot of architects also hide behind, the drawings rather than the discourse
and a kind of academia almost.
Yep. And I think, if you go way back in school, it's the same thing. The whole presentation portion of a project oftentimes sucks. Even kids graduating, their presentation is not put together well in the sense that it's conveying what they're trying to convey through their drawing with words. No. So there is definitely improvement, that needs to be done on that.
And even in that 100%. Space, like you just said, is that it's in the academic space. Yep. So a lot of times if they're successful, they might be really good, but they're still, I wouldn't say trapped, but they're within the academic bubble, which is
they're
more
talking
and more
to their
removed.
Peers. They're not talking to the normies.
Right,
exactly.
Right.
It's the same with, I think a lot of architects think it's important to impress their peers because that's how they win the awards, and that's how they perceive that they're going to move up that sort of value ladder. But it creates a whole culture of architects talking that architect language and just not being very relatable to ordinary people who ultimately are the ones that want their homes built. But I mean, they're a different type of architects, so maybe they work in commercial spaces and that might be completely different. But I think definitely in residential design, I think it's very important to be able to communicate with normal people.
I If I was thinking about the other day, I actually think that the biggest challenge that the profession faces boils down to that. I think that if, as a whole group of people in this profession, if all of us were somehow 2 times or 1.5 times better at communicating what we do just to an average person, the profession and therefore all the design produced would go up many, many times over. I think that's 100%. The biggest challenge.
I actually agree with you. I do agree with you. Like, and definitely that is backed up by the survey that I conducted on social media.
Yeah.
I agree with you. And it's very hard. I mean, don't you find yourselves, I mean, you're obviously very good at communicating. You run a podcast. You're
I don't know about that.
You're very much in that realm. But it's still, I mean, same with me. I mean, I talk all the time, so I probably can communicate, but still I find it just endlessly challenging to communicate clearly and effectively throughout the whole course of a project. Like it is just so challenging.
Yeah.
I think because people are they're very stressed often about the money that's involved or the decisions they're making. It's their home, it's emotional, it's interesting. I still can't get it right. And it's 20 odd years, isn't it?
It's also hard. I'm aware that we're just past the time, but it's also hard that there's just a lot of stuff that happens in the course of a project. Houses are complex things. There's just a lot of
very.
It's hard enough to get it done. Okay, that's the thing.
So endlessly challenging. I don't know. We are constantly talking about how to do it better, and I still don't feel like we nail it.
You're getting there. I love it though.
Anyway.
It's the final question we got to ask before we wrap this up. We always ask every architect this: is what is your favorite building?
Oh, can I say a city?
Yes. I had to think about that.
That's a new one, but we'll take it.
City will work.
I'm not sure. Because I can't think of a building outright, like just right away. But a city, earlier this year when we visited Milan, I just thought Milan, like, just from a spatial architectural perspective, I just loved it. I love the way the streets are formed in these regular, they've got these sort of walls of the apartment buildings on either side, and then within those there are courtyards. And it, like, the scale of it was just perfect, and I loved the sort of exuberant use of color, like in the shutters and the details on the buildings. The ground plane was decorated like, stone and cobbles and marble, and I loved Milan. I'd not been there before. But it's very different to Paris. Like, I love Paris too, but in a different way.
It could get a bit too
relentless,
repetitive.
Yeah. And Paris is a bit. I felt it was grittier than Milan. Like, Paris is more. It's got a real grit to it. Like,
you should come to New York City. That place is disgusting.
Yeah, have you been to New York?
I can say that because I lived there for many years.
Just in terms of European cities, but
yeah,
it's like Paris is so impressive, but it's got a different edge to it. But anyway, Milan, I just thought really surprised and delighted me. Yeah,
that's beautiful. I love
that's okay as an answer.
Yeah, it's a great answer.
Yeah.
Georgina, thank you so much for making the time on a Saturday morning for you. We could keep talking. Let's keep the conversation going one way or the other for sure. And thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It's been so lovely to meet you both.
Thank you, everybody, for listening to this week's episode. If you like what we're doing, you can find us on the Apple Podcast app and leave us a review on there. You can also find the show on Spotify and YouTube. To subscribe, like, share, all that good stuff. Our office is out there in the universe, the universe being the Ethernet, and you can find that, which is Fame Architecture and Design. The podcast has a hotline, where you can text or call it, which is 213-222-6950. So if you have a question or a guest suggestion or topic suggestion, text that number. You can also find the podcast on Instagram, which is Second Studio Pod. We have a pretty good following on there, so join the community, join in on the debates and the opinions that people share on the posts. We have reels, quotes, guest work images, announcements, all kinds of fun stuff.
Yep. That's it. You said it all.
All right. That's no, I didn't mention the website.
Okay. secondstudiopod.com.
Super exciting. All right. That's the website. Talk soon. Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.